Well, good morning. Good morning. There you had it. There you had it. That was the Prime Minister's press conference. And he outlined a number of topics of interest. And at least coming on to the end there, he addressed some of the priority areas for the government here in St. Kitts and Nevis. He also touched on the big talking point right now, which is the issue of Liat and St. Kitts and Nevis' position on that. But we're just about out of time where we'll break for the headline news and we will return. But if you have any calls, concerns, questions, opinions on anything that was said this morning, you can always call us here on Voices. The second half of the program, we'll dive into some of what was said by the Prime Minister during his press conference, as well as the discussions from this morning's CARICOM Heads of Government meeting that is currently ongoing virtually. Again, the topic of Liat, the insolvency, the airlines. Yes, there is some interest from six regional entities that are interested in filling the gap when it comes to intra-regional travel, as well as the economic impacts. I know the Prime Minister also mentioned the talk surrounding when the borders will be reopened. Minister Grant also addressed that. He spoke about the discussions that are being had with regards to the way forward for border reopening. We also had a discussion surrounding the challenges that the staff of the Marriott are having, and all of that. And we can dive deeper into those issues when it comes to Voices here on Win FM. It's just about that time where we'll break to bring you the headline news. The headline news here on Win FM. Yep.
Found the sound. 98.9 Win FM.
We now bring you the Win FM Headline News. The Win FM Headline News is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, Carib Brewery, CNC Trading.
Without limits, happy and free. The skin you're in with no apology. The one to seize the day. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. With LLB. Live, love, be. Live, love, be. Be who you know you can be. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. Angostura, lemon, lime and bitters. Live, love, be.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Till you walk with a low reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. 469-5303. DLU Walwyn, people you can trust.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
COVID-19 continues to have a significant impact on economies across the region, and assistance from the global community in debt repayment is critical to a rebound. That view is being shared by the outgoing chairperson of CARICOM, Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley.
COVID-19 has also wrought serious economic hardship and damage to our region. And the truth is, we've had to make significant calls and write so many letters that I cannot even remember, to heads of government across the world, reflecting on the fact that the Caribbean community is the most travel and trade dependent region in the world. And that in many instances in our community, countries depend on tourism to the extent of almost 40 to 50% of their GDP, both directly and indirectly. It is a hard blow that this region is facing. And to that extent, therefore, we have tried to reach out to the global community on a number of issues with respect to being able to handle our increased debt load, to being able to deal with the fact that we are not getting the revenue in this fiscal year that we would otherwise expect, and that therefore, when you combine these factors along with the other factors that we have faced with respect to the climate crisis, then the Caribbean is exceedingly vulnerable economically and nationally.
Following months of lobbying, the region has been given favorable responses from international partners. PM Mottley noted one country is that of the United States.
Indeed, as recent as last night, I received a letter from the Secretary of State of the United States of America, Mr. Mike Pompeo, as well as the Secretary of Treasury, Mr. Steve Mnuchin, jointly signed by them and written to me on behalf of, as chair of the Caribbean community. For the first time, we have now before us a significant and bold initiative and opportunity to be able to work together with our partners within the hemisphere to see how best we can blunt the instruments or blunt the consequences of COVID-19 as we go forward. In the letter, it was made absolutely clear that the United States has committed itself and has developed a multifaceted framework that they believe will help the region address the immediate humanitarian needs as well as assisting in the long-term recovery.
Concessional funds will be given to Barbados and the Bahamas.
Indeed, in the letter, it goes on to state specifically, first, if requested, the United States would support temporary access to the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development just for COVID-19 related assistance for the Bahamas and Barbados, the two Caribbean graduates from the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. That at the very least, those countries in the Caribbean that have been graduated from access to concessional funding from the World Bank ought to be given access now, largely because the needs in a pandemic or the needs coming out of a hurricane, as was the case with the Bahamas with Hurricane Dorian, require that they have access to concessional funding that will allow us to meet the most urgent demands of survival first and then thereafter to begin the journey of transformation once we have ensured that we can cause as many of our people to survive this awful pandemic.
Debt rescheduling is another initiative being implemented to member states of the region.
Similarly, they have also added that in addition, we will not object on the basis of income classification to borrowing by members from the Inter-American Development Bank to assist with economic or health recovery efforts. This is also substantive for us, and this is what we were asking for, like with the exceptional access to the World Bank, and we too have gotten it with respect to this letter. They continue. We have engaged with the World Bank staff to impress upon them that economic reform programs that can be supported by the international financial institutions should receive necessary and appropriate financing consistent with the World Bank's commitments on support to small states under the recent capital increase package.
Pierre Motley was at the time speaking at the virtual handover of the chairmanship of CARICOM to St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves.
There are clear differences between the shareholder governments over how the Liat situation should be handled. Antigua's Gaston Brown says it will be a form of state mandatory if the majority shareholding group of Liat is opportunistically allowed to collapse this regional institution and form a new entity without honoring the institution's liabilities to creditors. In a letter which begins with the words, "Dear all," the Antiguan Prime Minister says creditors, including the staff of Liat, for decades provided service and credit to Liat as an insolvent institution, knowing that they had the backing of the shareholding states. For these states to walk away from their liabilities is morally reprehensible and perhaps illegal, Brown argues. He says from his limited professional studies, he was taught that directors who knowingly operate an insolvent company is liable for wrongful and possibly fraudulent trading. Brown says too that the members of the shareholding board of Liat participated as directors over the years and presided over most of Liat's major decisions, including the ill-fated refleeting. According to Gaston Brown, the liquidation of Liat without settling liabilities should be resisted by creditors and other stakeholders. He says the possibility of legal action to stop the liquidation and protect the interest of creditors should not be ruled out. The state has an obligation to protect, not hide behind legal arguments and exploit vulnerable creditors, Prime Minister Brown says. Meanwhile, Liat pilots have hinted at the possibility of legal action to get the cash-strapped airline to meet its obligation towards the severance payment to pilots. Pilots Association President Patterson Thompson says a lot of pilots have given their entire adult life to Liat. According to Thompson, the company has a moral obligation to pay severance.
Solange Alfred, HTS News Force. The National Insurance Corporation has provided support to out-of-work St. Lucians through its Economic Relief Program. Government's continued payment of salaries of civil servants and the focus on manufacturing and construction activity have provided a measure of respite in the face of the pandemic-induced recession. However, many are still feeling the pinch as GDP numbers tanked, the economy stagnated, struggling businesses shutter, and hundreds of St. Lucians, especially in the tourism sector, are laid off and furloughed. Despite fiscal constraints, the Prime Minister announced an extension of the NIC-backed Economic Relief Program, ERP, to September 2020 to ease the nerves of anxious St. Lucians. However, Independent Senator Dr. Adrian Auger has misgivings about the efficiency of the program.
According to the announcement that I heard on the radio, NIC indicated that they were just starting to process May, and we're in June. In fact, we're in July. So I think that pace is not fast enough because for many people that's the only option they have. So you don't want to be in a situation of too little, too late. So I think what we can do is find ways to accelerate the processing, maybe additional staff, maybe additional hours. I know it's difficult and costly time for the economy, but definitely we need to improve upon that because people are waiting. People are waiting for this as, in some cases, their only hope of sustaining themselves.
Economic diversity has been touted as the new normal for the sustainability of the island. the uncertainty surrounding the travel industry, given the surge in COVID-19 cases in the US, Brazil, and the European nations, has forced many countries to re-evaluate travel protocols.
As the Prime Minister mentioned in his closing remarks to the budget, we don't know if there's going to be increasing uncertainty. Certainly the market conditions in the US for tourism are not good for us. The EU has just declined to admit American visitors to its shores, so the US is off the list of countries that can come. I mean, that has to give us concern as well. So hopefully what happens is that we can get the domestic economy, and this is my fundamental point, we need to get the domestic economy as well positioned as possible now, get out of the way in terms of businesses reopening, and get some money flowing in the economy as quickly as we can among ourselves, because there is no immediate promise of massive change coming from the tourism industry.
For its part, the current administration has launched an aggressive Love St. Lucia campaign to shore up local consumption to stimulate the domestic economy. However, Dr. Auger posits that it needs to be complemented with the easing of regulatory restrictions he believes stifles economic activity, especially in the entertainment sector.
If we are COVID-free, then the business of social distancing and masks is wonderful but not necessary. We have to decide. Either we are COVID-free or we are not COVID-free. If we are to take advantage of our position, which we have wonderfully achieved, then we must not have these restrictions. Get the economy moving. The arts and entertainment sector needs to be up and running. Entertainers have not worked since March. The event sector is closed down. You can't have a funeral, a wedding, or a gathering without serious restrictions once you cross a certain number. We can do away with that now. However, let me caution that if we do open the economy to tourism, we will have to revert to those things to protect ourselves. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying be irresponsible, but I am saying wherever possible, let's get people back to work.
St. Lucia's new normal has consisted of social distancing, face masks, and increased sanitizing practices, all in an effort to limit community spread. With the island announcing a 100% recovery rate, Dr. Adrian Auger is calling for a new dispensation for the economy. Solange Alfred, HTS News Force.
This is Al Jazeera.
So nearly 2 years after journalist Jamal Khashoggi walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul and was never seen again, and the trial of the 20 Saudi nationals accused of killing him has begun in Turkey. Khashoggi's fiancée, Hatice Cengiz, has been so vocal about bringing his killers to justice. She was among those to testify on Friday, but she may not get the kind of justice she's hoping for. This trial against the men is happening in Turkey in their absence. Khashoggi's murder, of course, drew widespread condemnation, including from the UN Special Rapporteur, who spent months investigating the case. She, Agnes Callamard, is urging the international community to not let the case out of their sight.
I call on them to ensure that in the next session in November that there are far greater international presence so that we continue to deliver that message to Saudi Arabia and to the rest of the world that you cannot get away with killing a journalist. And let's not forget that this is a state execution. Of course, we are focusing on individuals, but this is a state execution. This is why the presence of other states, of other members of the international community is important.
So Agnes Callamard there. She also spoke about the United States, and we'll be talking to Mike Hanna in Washington about that shortly. But I want to start with Sinem Kosioglu, our correspondent in Istanbul. You were outside the court today. Go through exactly what happened.
Well, Kemal, this is the first hearing of the trial in absentia. As Agnes Callamard put it through after the hearing was finished, it has a theatrical side because the suspects are not here, and since they don't have physical presence in Turkey, it is impossible to charge them with anything here. But of course, the court might decide for several life sentences. This is what what is expected. But as per the UN rapporteur Agnes Callamard, this is better than having nothing, like a court procedure that is ongoing in Saudi Arabia. And this is the first time that we had access to the witnesses of the case. We were able to hear them, hear what happened during the day of the murder and in the following days. For instance, there are 54 witnesses in this case, and we were able to hear some of their testimonies. Some of them were gardeners, drivers, technicians, especially the technical worker who works for the residents of Saudi Arabia's the then consulate in Istanbul. He was ordered to take some days off, but before going, he was the security personnel of the consulate told them to lit fire in the oven, a big tandoor, which was built in the garden of the Saudi consul's residence. As you would remember, many experts discussed that since Jamal Khashoggi's body still haven't been able to be found, his body might have been burned in that high temperature oven. And a couple of days later, that technical worker came back to the residence, and in his testimony today, he said that the marble surrounding the lid of the tandoor has changed, and somebody has used some bleach kind cleaner to cleanse around that. That's why this was very interesting. But all of the consulate employees who have testimony today and who will be testifying in the following hearing, they have been ordered to take some days off. That's why it was important to hear their testimonies today, but the second hearing is postponed not postponed, but set for November 24, as the UN rapporteur Agnes Callamard said. She expects to see more international presence because she was not very happy that it was mostly the local and international press rather than higher international body representatives during the hearing.
OK, thank you for all of that. Sinem Koscioglu following the trial in Istanbul. To this day, Jamal Khashoggi's remains have never been found. We've got this report now from Charles Stratford, looking back at the events.
This is the last moment Jamal Khashoggi was seen alive. It's October the 2nd, 2018. The journalist who wrote for the Washington Post newspaper had gone to the Saudi consulate in Istanbul to get documents he needed for his wedding. His Turkish fiancée, Hatice Cengiz, waited for him outside. Turkish prosecutors say he was murdered, his body dismembered, and the remains never found. 20 Saudis indicted for murder are to be tried in their absence in a court in Istanbul. Police say security camera video and photographs show the Saudi suspects arriving in Istanbul on the day Khashoggi was killed. Other video evidence shows them checking into a hotel, going to the consulate before returning to the airport and leaving that night. Istanbul prosecutors accuse former deputy head of Saudi General Intelligence Ahmed al-Asiri and former royal advisor Saud al-Qahtani of instigating murder with monstrous intent. The 18 other defendants include this man, Meher Mutrab, who frequently travelled with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Khashoggi's murder caused widespread revulsion around the world. He'd been in self-imposed exile for around a year because he was afraid of being arrested if he returned home. He'd formerly been close to the Saudi royal family, but in recent years became a vocal critic of the Saudi Crown Prince. Some Western governments and the CIA said they believe Mohammed bin Salman ordered the killing. The kingdom denies that. Last December, a Saudi court sentenced 5 men to death and 3 to jail after a long and secretive trial. The UN's Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial, Summary or Arbitrary Executions, Agnes Callamard, who completed a 6-month investigation into Khashoggi's murder, said the Saudi trial made a mockery of justice. None of the guilty were officially named. Last May, Khashoggi's sons said they forgave the murderers, but rights groups said the pardon had been forced. Callamard said it was another Saudi example of a parody of justice. Turkey accuses the Saudi government of obstructing the murder investigation. The Saudis say the Istanbul prosecutor didn't comply with requests to share information. The Saudi Crown Prince has denied ordering the murder but admitted bearing responsibility as the kingdom's effective leader, standing in for ageing King Salman. Khashoggi's fiancée Hatice Cengiz says she hopes the trial will at least shed light on where his body is. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera.
This is the Carib Update News Service. I am Wendy Chateau reporting. Friction over Liat as Antigua's Prime Minister makes a strong statements about the issue. This is the big story we're tracking this hour. Details to this and more straight ahead. Now for the details. Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Brown is reportedly upset about plans to liquidate regional airline Liat, even accusing other countries of seeking to undermine the process. There has been even a report about him boycotting Friday's virtual meeting of CARICOM leaders. Prime Minister Gaston Brown took to Facebook to vent, saying, quote, "There are some regional leaders who see our regional institution, carrier, Liat, as a predator, and they are determined to keep their knees on its neck to prevent its regeneration." Brown later told the CMC that there is a conspiracy by a few regional leaders to stymie the resurgence of Liat. He was perhaps making reference to an advertisement where commuters were being encouraged to travel on flights operated by OCL Barbados Limited and indicating flights now available for Caribbean destinations. The flights, which are due to begin on July 12, is promising commuters in Grenada, St. Lucia, Dominica, St. Vincent, Barbados, Guyana and Tortola fares as low as $99 plus taxes, and giving telephone contact numbers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the One Love, One Caribbean initiative. Meanwhile, the Antigua and Barbuda government said Cabinet on Wednesday held a fulsome discussion on the future of Liat 1974 Limited and that it is developing a plan for a new Liat, which includes an invitation to private entities to invest in that new carrier. The Antigua and Barbuda government says it has re-examined the conditions under which visitors and nationals returning home can enter the island because of the coronavirus. The country has recorded 68 positive cases and 3 deaths from the virus that was first detected in China last December and blamed for 516,000 deaths and the infection of nearly 11 million others worldwide. Information Minister Melford Nicholas spoke about the adjustments at a press conference. He said that the new policy does not require that everyone be tested upon arrival at the VC Bird International Airport.
For those persons that are from North America, the PCR test obviously will be the gold standard, but if that is not available, the Sophia 2 test and negative Sophia 2 test will also be acceptable.
Nicholas said that testing on arrival has turned out to be unsustainable.
There was going to be a strain on resources to be able to continue with the whole process. And again, learning from Jamaica, who was a little ahead of us in relation to that particular process, and they, of course, were dealing with a larger volume of persons. With the best of intentions, it would have been overwhelming. One, we can improve the customer experience on arrival, and two, we are also improving the ability for managing the health risks associated with it.
The Barbados government says it is considering introducing the 12-month Barbados Welcome Stamp to allow visitors the option to work remotely from the island for a year at a time. Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley said that the stamp concept, now being refined for promotion, would allow people to come and work in Barbados from overseas digitally. She said one of the things the coronavirus pandemic has shown is that it made short-term travel more difficult because of the testing and the requirements for rapid testing, which were not reliably available. This is Newsbreak from the Carib Update News Service. In more news, Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley late Thursday announced the establishment of the Community Recovery Program aimed specifically at areas that were at the center of protest there last week.
The Cabinet approved the establishment of this National Recovery Program, led by a team of persons whose skills will allow that program to determine the action plans for these areas.
Rowley spoke about the need to lead recovery in poor areas of the Republic.
This as an appendage to the recovery program that we have been engaged in, the post-COVID recovery. This too is a recovery that we're aiming for. And we take it in that context and we will imbibe it into that recovery. But specific to these areas that have specific needs.
He suggested that special attention must be paid to people on the margins. All the coalition leaders of Suriname's incoming government, except the likely president, have tested positive for COVID-19. The latest is Ronnie Brunswick, who has been nominated to be Speaker of the House. VHP leader Chan Santoki is the only coalition leader who hasn't tested positive for COVID-19, the respiratory disease caused by the novel coronavirus. Prajaha Luhar leader Paul Somohardo is being treated for the disease at the Academic Hospital Paramaribo. NPS Chairman Gregory Rossland is in isolation at home. The Assembly building is currently being thoroughly cleaned and all meetings organized there for this week have been postponed. The local health authorities are investigating who the infected coalition leaders had contact with. These are some of the top stories from around the Caribbean this hour. This has been Newsbreak from the Carib Update News Service, the Caribbean's newsroom. Reporting this hour, I am Wendy Chateau.
That was the WinFM Headline News, brought to you by KDP Enterprises, Caribbean Alliance, Carib Brewery, CNC Trading, The Grange.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Tilly Wall with a low reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we've got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Dealey Walwyn, people you can trust.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Without limits, happy and free. The skin you're in with no apology. The one to seize the day. Grab an LLB. Cheers to a lemon, lime, and bitters. Live, love, be.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
When is the last time that you've had lunch or dinner away from home? The ambience of Sweet Cane on Port Zante provides you with that touch. Sweet Cane daily specials include burgers, wraps, soup, and tasty seafood dishes. Sweet Cane also caters for events and special parties. Call our Sweet Cane hotline at 465-4345 or 665-7628. Sweet Cane, they've got the touch.
Local weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis, valid up to 8 a.m. tomorrow, Saturday, 4th July. Synopsis: surface high pressure will be the dominant weather feature affecting conditions today. Stable conditions are expected to prevail, thus restricting significant shower activity. Today's weather: partly cloudy and slightly hazy with a 40% chance of morning showers. Tonight's weather: partly cloudy with a 30% or low chance of showers. Winds are east at 13 to 28 kilometers or 7 to 15 knots. Seas not exceeding 1.5 meters or 5 feet. Today's sunset 6:49 p.m. Tomorrow's sunrise 5:41 a.m.
When is the last time that you've had lunch or dinner away from home? The ambience of Sweet Cane on Port Zante provides you with that touch. Sweet Cane daily specials include burgers, wraps, soup, and tasty seafood dishes. Sweet Cane also caters for events and special parties. Call our Sweet Cane hotline at 465-4345 or 665-7628. Sweet Cane, they've got the touch.
Found the sound. 98.9. Win FM.
Welcome to Voices for today, Friday, July 3rd. Yes, I got that correct, July 3rd. Well, for the better part of the first hour, you heard a bit from the Prime Minister during his press conference there. But for the second half of the program, we'll dive into some of what he said. It's an open line. You can share your thoughts and views on anything that he would have expressed and would have said during the first hour that you think that was of interest to you. And we'll also look a bit at what was discussed this morning, as it relates to the CARICOM heads meeting, that virtual meeting there that they're having. It's still ongoing right now, but they had the opening session this morning, and the big topics coming out of those discussions were the economic impact of COVID-19 on the region. The U.S. has given some indications that they're willing to assist the region with regards to economic recovery, as well as the big talking point, LIAT. So as we continue the program here, we'll just take a break, acknowledge our sponsors, Husfords and Flow, and then we'll come right back with those discussions.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Horseman's. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, yes. Pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Horswood's Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss this. It's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Flow's new combo plan, the people's plan. Combo. New combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
I want a combo, but not for my belly. I feel me cell phone, so me call anybody. Call Mr. Man, call Granny. On the island, Flow come combo me.
Yes, there is no need for two phones no more. Cause with Flow combo plan, you're paying less for more.
Flow got a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
Dial star 129 number sign to activate your combo plan today.
Welcome back to Voices, and we go straight to the phone line. Caller, good morning. Good afternoon, rather.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I found that press conference was just a waffle, you know? Promises and waffling. Very few definitive answers. No definitive answers on LEAT, none on the severance payments for workers in the hotel industry, none on the reopening of borders, none on the Charlestown Accord, nothing, no new directions for St. Kitts and Nevis post-COVID. You know, I remember when Alki David plane came here with the plans to jumpstart the medical marijuana business. I remember saying we're going to regret the day that we didn't at least start a program then. And here we are in 2020, still talking about starting it, right? As an alternative or a supplement to our agriculture. Nothing happened. And we're just talking about it still. The only thing that I think the government came up with is to further cheapen our CBI with the hope that it will attract new clients, as the hurricane relief one did. Okay? And so the race to the bottom with our CBI continues. Right? Everything is consulting, and more consultations. It's time to end the consultations and lead. The government is bereft of ideas, and that's why it has to wait for ideas and solutions from either the leaders in the other countries or generally the other countries in the region. I mean, St. Kitts and Nevis are accustomed to lead, not follow the region. You know, I heard about Barbados, for instance, starting I think they call it Barbados Stamp or Stamp Barbados, something like that, whereby people can actually, foreigners can actually go there and work for a year, I assume pay taxes and that sort of thing, work for a year online, essentially. Okay? In other words, they don't have to go through the process of, you know, trying to quarantine for 2 weeks and ending up having to rush back to go back to work. They can stay in Barbados and work. That's a great idea, right? I mean, the longer people can stay in a country and spend, the better it is for the economy of that country. And so I expected innovative ideas like these to be coming from the press conference. But nothing. Just promises.
But Carlo,
and this, yes.
Several, maybe 2-3 years back, there was some suggestion, and it was met with heavy criticism, when the Prime Minister indicated that we need to move away from having a dependency to building our other pillars of the economies, of our economy here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And that was met with a lot of criticism. What do you think it was?
I don't remember that. I always remember people calling in and saying that we need to diversify from tourism.
No, it was...
Nobody would criticize something like that.
Yeah, it was heavily criticized, Carlo. But what I want to ask you is, how do you think, or where do you think we can go from here in terms of building out, and what other pillars of our economy should we be focusing on right now, seeing that tourism is not going to be at that same point it was earlier this year, 2018, 2019?
Well, I can give you ideas, but I won't at this time. What I'm saying is, we just fought an election. You would have thought that these would have been on the minds of people when they were considering, when they were looking at the campaigns. They would have been looking at the programs, the ideas that those candidates had. Those are the ones we look to for leadership, right? I'm just an ordinary citizen. I have my own ideas, but, and like I said, I can give them at a future time. But we just, like I said, those are we elect people because we think that they have programs and ideas that would help us in the future, right? They shouldn't now be coming to us and saying, well, what can we do? We have to consult. No, this is the time to implement programs that you would have come to the electorate with, okay, and excited the electorate with. This is the time to implement, not consult. That's what I'm saying, right? If they're going to come now, so soon after an election, it suggests what I'm saying, that they are bereft of ideas. They have no solutions of their own. That they have to, now come to even the John public. We elect officials, we elect candidates, we elect government ministers because we think they have some kind of superior ideas. They're more knowledgeable than us, right? And have ideas that we can then use to advance our country. If that wasn't the case, man, they could have just elect any Joe Blow off the street. Okay?
Yes.
And and obviously that doesn't happen. We elect them because we think that they have the best plans and projects and that sort of things for the future. And if they can't deliver, if they still have to be consulting at this stage, this is the stage, practically every country are going to have to essentially start, not necessarily from scratch, but certainly from down at the bottom. And it's the first out the door that's going to get the worm. The early bird is going to get the worm with this, right? And if you stay here and dilly and dally and wait until we see what the others doing, we're going to be behind the 8 ball. Time to actually implement stuff, right? Not consult and forever consult and waffle.
Okay,
so that's what, to me, the whole press conference was about, waffling.
Okay,
nothing definitive.
Okay, Colin. Let's quickly. I want to ask you your perspective on the Liat situation. We heard the Prime Minister this morning.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't get on to the 12 o'clock news.
But he didn't give a position. Yes.
But yes,
something like that, for instance, right? Don't you think we should have at least some kind of position on it? The way I looked at the Liat thing is that it's time for deregulating Liat, right? They've been operating inefficiently, and one of the reasons they're operating inefficiently is the fact that they don't have the kinds of planes that suits a lot of the routes that they have. Okay, what's the sense of having that? They have 72-seater aircraft and 42-seater aircraft. What is the sense of bringing a 72-seater aircraft from, let's say, St. Thomas with 10 people for St. Kitts? Makes absolutely no sense. You need smaller planes for those shorter routes, okay? And so you can achieve that and leave the larger planes for the longer routes, like between Barbados and Trinidad or Antigua and Trinidad or Antigua and Guyana, those long haul routes, and use Antigua and Barbados and perhaps Trinidad as hubs, and let the other smaller airlines in a deregulated environment supply these hubs with people. That is, to me, the obvious way to go. The other way that we could have done, especially in St. Kitts and Nevis case, where we don't want to intervene too much in Leah, don't want to support them so much, is work out what kind of air service would best suit us. Okay? Negotiate with Liat on the provision of that service at a particular cost, and let us do the pricing arrangement, whether we subsidize it or we're going to get all our citizens to pay the total cost of that air travel. That's open for discussion. But basically, hands off on Liat. All we're doing essentially is contracting them to provide a service which we decide, okay, based on our tourism and what we want. Okay? Liat comes up with a price, and we be prepared to pay it, finance it however we could. All right? And that works for both Liat, and that would work for us as well.
But Carlo, on that point that you're making there, I understand what you're saying, but the bottom line, the issue surrounding Liat and the position that it's found itself in, generally is a sense that I'm not going to book a ticket to go from here to Barbados for $600 when I can just book and get $400 ticket from here to Florida or to DC or wherever it is in the U.S.
Well, that's not quite so, eh?
No, I'm just saying.
You want to go to Florida or DC for a particular reason. You would want to go to Barbados for a particular reason, whether it's to get a visa or whatever, right? So that's not how it works. I mean, the market is what really determines the price.
That is true.
And what has been happening is that Liat has monopolized the market, essentially monopolized the market. There's no competition. And so they can basically set the price and set it high, right? People talk about the taxes and that sort of thing. That's only part of the story, all right? If you had a competition, then that you can bet your life that the prices would come down.
Yeah, but let's be realistic, though,
If the prices come down, you'd have more traffic.
Let's be realistic, though, Carlo. When we look at the fee and the pricing structure of Liat, we have to acknowledge that the taxes are ridiculous, and that is what make up at least 65% of the cost for the ticket.
Yes, they are ridiculous.
Because you have fuel charges, you have environmental charges, and all of that. And I think that's the consensus that the governments have realized. Because even if they put a minimum revenue guarantee, that same minimum revenue guarantee that they're putting into Liat, or they're investing in Liat, is practically the same amount that they would have received in taxes. So then why not maybe lower the taxes, remove a couple of the taxes, for specifically for Liat, and work around that?
Well, actually, there are other ways they can do it if they apart from the taxes. If we had one Caribbean space, you wouldn't, let's say, like a flight between here and Nevis, it's practically no frills, right? It's almost like taking a ferry over, right? If they operated like that, the overheads would be much cheaper. You wouldn't have to be going through expensive scanners and security and that sort of thing. But the islands are too territorial. They don't want to do things like that. Look at the situation right now with the COVID-19. Practically all of the countries have it under control. You mean to say you couldn't open up the whole Caribbean region for regional travel? Something as simple as that for regional travel? I'm not talking international now, because obviously it's not under control in the States, right? But you could have opened up the regional economy, and that would have given hotels and that sort of thing would have been getting clientele, not as much as before, since most of our clientele came from North America or Europe, but at least it would have opened up. Hotels would not have had to close down and that sort of thing. You know, they would have been able to operate at least on some limited level. But they're not even something. I would have thought that would be so obvious, but it's not happening, because you're going to have our Prime Minister saying, "Oh, we have the 120 million, the best in the region." He upset Gaston Brown. He probably upset other countries in the region, right? With that, there's no cooperation. How do you foster cooperation with things like that? How can Gaston Brown expect other people to think when he started to set conditions, the headquarters got to remain here. Their name have to be the same, and those sorts of things. You know, I don't understand what they're thinking, to be quite honest. I mean, most of us ordinary people would tell you that that is not the way to win friends and influence people. But for some reason, the leaders can't get over their egos, and so you have these kinds of things happening. Right? So I don't know what's going to eventually happen. What's his name? Ralph Gonzalez sounds so frustrated. He's willing to just go it alone on a kind of thing like what I just mentioned, where he decides, well, this is what the populace for St. Vincent and the Grenadines need in terms of air services. I have this plane here that can provide it, and just have his own little airline. And that is, and that's one route to it. Everybody have their own little airline, and some will sink and some will swim.
Well, based on what was said this morning, and I'm about to play it, is there have been 6 interested airlines in filling the gap, or 6 airlines have been interested in filling the gap when it comes to Liat, because we know Liat is basically no more. So 6 airlines, and those are the ones who, the ones mentioned by Ralph and a few others.
Are those local airlines or foreign owned? Do you know?
Several are. I'll just let it play. It didn't get to make the headline news, but it's Mia actually spoke about it this morning.
It doesn't speak well for us if we have to let foreign airlines.
Well, no, I don't think any of them are foreign airlines, to be exact. I know they want local, Caribbean
and
Airlines.
They are private. All of them are private, essentially.
Yes, private.
Right.
Private and semi-private.
That's a model, but that's similar to the hub and spoke model, right? Use those small airlines to provide services to the hub, and have a really trimmed down Liat. As a matter of fact, I think only 3 planes they own anyhow. The rest are leased. A trimmed down Liat to perform any route that is over 45 minutes. Anything under 45 minutes or half an hour, use the smaller airlines for that. And then the longer routes, like from Antigua to Barbados, or Antigua to Puerto Rico, or Barbados to Ghana, use the ATRs, the 42 or 72 seaters, for those routes, right? The hubs would have been fed with people from the other islands, okay? So the larger aircraft will now have people to service those routes. To me, that's a way to go as well. But like I said, you have all these leaders, and all of them going to have their different ideas. And, maybe we should just leave Liat to fend for itself, however it fends for itself, and whosoever will come in and because we must have transportation in the region. Everybody agree on that. That's a given, right? Okay. And whether it's
call it 30 seconds,
Liat or some other airline, it has to be done.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. That caller was engaging in terms of the way forward. Some recommendations being put forward to have Liat restructured and come better when it comes to air travel in the region. We know Liat is no more, but how do we go forward in terms of intra-regional travel? That has been something that has been talked about for many, many years. Liat has served its time, according to outgoing chairman of CARICOM, Mayor Motley, but Antigua's Prime Minister wants a regional airline with slightly similar model to what Liat had to operate, and also to how the big question now is, how do we go forward with this? Because you're not going to get all the support. You're not going to get the support of all regional governments in terms of the way forward for an airline like Liat. So how do we deal with that particular issue when one, as the caller said, one prime minister is looking to have already put out there that, look, I want this to be housed in my territory? Is it feasible to have the airline there? How is this going to benefit the other governments who are also investing their country's money into the startup of another airline? So all of that are what is being discussed right now, and the way forward. Consensus will be made coming out of the meeting, the special heads of government meeting that's being held today, and likely, or hopefully rather, that we can actually get some leeway in terms of air travel, because that's the one thing that is linking all the territories, the peoples, whether it be from Guyana and Trinidad in the south to Jamaica, Belize in the west, Bahamas up north. So how do we deal with this? It's the critical problem, the critical question that needs to be answered right now. But when we come back, we'll hear from Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley on intra-regional travel. But we'll acknowledge our partners, Flo and Hosford and Company Limited.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 30 days of unlimited social messaging, 10 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, and 1,000 local anywhere calls and texts. With the always-on prepaid plan, all for $100. Keep your number when you switch to St. Kitts' most reliable LTE network. Switch to Flow. It only gets better.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Horseman's. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Horseman's Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat, up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss this, it's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Voices here on Win FM 98.9. I'm your host, Jermaine Abel, sitting in today. We are taking a look at some of what was said today at the Prime Minister's first press conference since elections, and had some interesting points that he made. We're also taking a look at intra-regional travel. We heard this morning from Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley that there are 6 new airlines that are willing to take up or fill the gap that has been left by the insolvency of Liat. Also, how do we go forward now with the fact that Liat's no more and some of the challenges and issues that former airline had, and not have those be repeated when we go forward in terms of inter-regional travel here? Should the government invest in another airlines? The talk of taxes is another issue. How do they deal with specific taxes when it comes to that regional airline? So that's all of that is being discussed. The Prime Minister was asked to address the Liat issue this morning. He spoke to some of that. Also responded to a question, and then the regional leaders are debating the way forward when it comes to Liat. But nevertheless, we're going now and hear from what Mia Mottley had to say this morning with regards to intra-regional travel, as well as a bit from the cruise industry.
I accepted the responsibility of co-chairing a task force for the Americas on cruise tourism with the CEO of Royal Caribbean, Michael Bailey. And I've done so not just only to make sure that we can prepare our way to reopening the boundaries for cruise tourism in a safe way, and that allows those people within our community to be able to see economic activity again, from vendors to taxi drivers to tourism attractions, etc. But they will not benefit if the cruise ships are not coming, and the cruise ships cannot come unless there are safe protocols that we are satisfied on, and that they too, as owners of companies, are satisfied can work for us. We hope within the next 2 weeks, therefore 2 months, to be able to settle those protocols. But we will also use the opportunity to be able to see how best we can deepen our partnerships. The reality is that the Caribbean commands 40 to 50% of cruise tourism, and we are a inevitable partner of anyone who is involved in the cruise business across the global community. It is for this reason that we asked for a meeting of heads and the heads of the cruise ship industry earlier this year at the Intersessional. And that meeting regrettably could not come off because of the difficulties with respect to COVID. And as a result, we then had a meeting focused purely on protocols that led us also to determine how we are going to literally be able to repatriate the many thousands of persons who, some of our citizens, of course, were working there, and others to the other parts of the world who were working within our region, but from other parts of the world. I therefore hope and pray that our region will deeply collaborate and partner to see how best we can speak with one voice with respect to where we go with the cruise industry in our region, and how best we can extract even greater benefits for those citizens who in very many instances are small players within our economy, but who depend strongly on the additional number of persons visiting our countries on a weekly basis on the cruise ships when they come back. There is also the issue that we faced with respect to the governance issues within the region. This has not been an easy period for CARICOM. And believe you me, we have had, as the Secretary General said, to deal with a range of issues. Indeed, the number of democratic elections that are being held within this region in this period of time is perhaps one of the most intense periods for any region across the global community. In December, Dominica had elections. In March, Guyana had elections. In June, St. Kitts had elections. In May, Suriname had elections. And there are a number of other countries that are due within the near future to have democratic elections. We have, as a region, made it very clear the values that we stand for, and those are reflected in the CARICOM Charter for Civil Society. Without saying more and doing more, I want to say that we have tried to play our role by ensuring that we are there for members of the community by being able to send in electoral observer teams. We sent them in Suriname, we sent them in St. Kitts, and in Guyana's case, we sent in 2 teams. First, an electoral observer team, and then a high-level team that went in after the 5 heads of government visited Guyana, when it was clear that there was not going to be an easy ride for the declaration of a result from the March 2nd elections. It is regrettable that today, the 3rd of July, there is still no clarity as to the conclusion of that electoral process. But we have said what we've had to say on that matter, and we await the ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice. But we also know that we have a duty to support one another. And I say simply this: Guyana has a bright future. Guyana must have a future that makes every Guyanese a winner, and not just some. And we trust and pray that we are in a position as a family to work together, but we cannot ignore principles when it is inconvenient to stand by them. I say enough on that matter at this stage, and I look forward to us being able to resolve this as a family and to ensure that the values which we reflect as a Caribbean community are those values which our founding fathers enshrined for us, and which we continue to hold dearly, because these are the values that make the definable difference to the kind of democracy that we need to have, that is different from that which the kind of exploitative history that the Caribbean was forged in after its modern settlement. As we go forward, we also recognize that there are other difficulties within the community that continue to have to be dealt with. I'm happy that we were able to ensure that a level hand was played with respect to the difficulties being faced by our colleagues in the Turks and Caicos and in the Bahamas with respect to aspects of migration. And I believe that there is a framework that allows for easy communication, but that there has to be respect for the difficulties that individual countries face as we go into the hurricane season on top of the management of this pandemic. My friends, this has been a difficult 6 months for the region. But I have every confidence that the region can make it. I have every confidence that we will get it together. There are those of you who are deeply worried about the absence of interregional transport with the news that LIAT will be liquidated. Let me say at the outset that this is not an easy decision for any of us. But the reality is that LIAT has been, for us, a critical part of our history. It has allowed Caribbean people to move, but there also is a time when those instruments that served us well in the past may not be the right instruments for us going forward. And to that extent, the board of directors, because of the heavy debt which LIAT has been carrying, not now, but for many, many years, have indicated to us that it is no longer possible to trade as LIAT 1974 Limited, and that in truth and in fact, the company is effectively insolvent and that it needs liquidation. They would have done so conscious of the fact that unless you liquidate an insolvent company, directors will be guilty of fraudulent trading. And to that extent, as shareholder governments, we have had to respond simply because to do otherwise would mean providing a level of funding that we simply do not have at this time in the affairs of our community and in the affairs of our nations. The good news is that our commitment remains to safe, reliable, affordable travel within the Eastern Caribbean. I asked the Secretariat to prepare a report for me 2 weeks ago, and they were able to show that there are 38 airlines flying within our Caribbean community, 9 of which come from outside. The remaining 29, agreeably, are predominantly in the Northern Caribbean, and it is therefore within the Southern Caribbean that the greatest gap exists. I am happy to report as chair of the community and as Prime Minister of Barbados, to my certain knowledge, that since announcements were being made earlier this week about LIAT's demise, that 6 airlines have come forward offering to fill the space. SVG Air and One Caribbean out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the chairman, I'm sure, will speak more to that. CAL, which is already an airline known to the region. Inter-Caribbean, which is an airline from the Turks and Caicos and is a successor airline to Air Turks and Caicos and has been around for over 20-something years with an extensive fleet as well. Silver, which we have asked to meet with us over the course of the next few days. And that is an airline out of the United States of America, but working within the Caribbean and between the US and the Caribbean. And of course, the Air Antilles, which is French-based, as you know, and predominantly between Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Paris, but have an interest now in working within the Southern Caribbean. We are satisfied that these 6 airlines can more than fill the immediate gap, particularly given the reduced travel within COVID. Having said that, I hope that we will be able to work with them and other private sector players who have also expressed an interest to being able to see how they can work either on their own or with some of the existing players in order to be able to fill the gap, simply because governments have now to use their funds to be able to deal with health expenditure, to be able to deal with water, to be able to deal with other forms of transport, to be able to deal with the fact that our tourism sector as well as our vulnerable populations are all requiring us to hold their hands because they have come to zero revenue. Our unemployment, for the most part in the region, in some instances, it has doubled. In other instances, it has trebled. And therefore, we come to this moment not because there is pleasure in coming to this moment. We come to this moment as a matter of practical reality that governments must focus on keeping their citizens alive. Governments must focus on keeping their economies going. And if that focus can allow others to come on board and to be able to help us carry the weight. Well, my people in Barbados would tell you that I live by the mantra, many hands make light work. And we look forward, therefore, to being able to ensure that the people of the region will be able to have affordable, reliable, safe access to air travel within the next few weeks. In addition, as heads of government earlier this week, we agreed that those countries that are in a position to help stimulate air travel through the reduction of airline taxes should immediately reflect and see how they can revise so to do. And that similarly, to the extent that licenses and AOC air operator certificates are needed for some of these private sector airlines to be able to connect our countries, that we should proceed to assist as far as possible, being able to use the power of the pen where the might of the dollar is not capable of filling the gap. I hope, therefore, as I pass on this chairmanship to my brother, to the person who is the most senior of us within the region as heads of government, that we will continue to see the improvements that will inure to the benefit of ordinary Caribbean people. I said at the outset of this speech that I did not want to focus just on technocratic matters.
Well, there you had it. There you had it. That was Barbados' Prime Minister and outgoing chair of CARICOM, Mia Mottley. We go directly to the phone lines. Caller, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Abel.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are your days going?
It's going okay.
Good afternoon to your listeners very internet. I just want to get an understanding with this press conference that took place this morning from the Prime Minister. There was a question pertaining about herb, ganja.
I'm not quite sure. I can find out for you, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay, well, if anything was indicated of that nature, the Prime Minister needs to put the people on public stage of mind in what they did with that legislation, because up to now, ain't no coming to the drafting of being, as they call it, gazetted. That's the issue we really need to confirm to the public at large and stop misleading the public. Because if you're only going in for this for your own convenience sake, it's woe beyond to them, because he was one, and Denzel Douglas was another one who was disregarded against Herb for the use of our people in things and needs, and even the Caribbean and the whole. So if these people really see us and talking about they're putting things in place, they need to tell the people the truth and stop telling lies. He been lying all this time, you know. Up to now, he can't bring a definite answer to the magnitude of what the commission give to him from the report. He can't outline the 12 report documents that was given to him since in 2019, January the 10th. This is 2020, we're in July, and you're still telling me you're still skipping around and trying to make song and dance like you so care. You know you don't care.
So has the Rastafarian Community Commission bodies approached the government to see the way forward? The Attorney General?
Numerous of time, Maya. Even when the judgment had done with the issue and the Sankofa take the administration to court, and the judge tell them, when you all are going to change these Drug Act laws, or the implication that you call as the Drug Act, you all have to have consultation with the Rastafari community. You know how they do it? They do it when they feel in their own convenience sake to consider about that consultation. When they had no idea of putting the consultation on how it's supposed to go. So there is when you see that the ball has just dropped all over again. But we have some things we're going to take place that can make sure the administration understand the hope is not for them, not for Rasta alone. It's for the whole entire people who need it for the use, because the holistic way we need the herb to be used. We ain't agitating for the smoking ganja. We want to see how people be cheap with the herb from head to toe. So we can understand how we're going forward in building a healthy nation and not letting these pharmaceutical companies coming here and dominating, because that's the issue we're going to be coming on here soon. When they say, as they stated, as a bill that indicates an industry, because we realize they're looking at industry, but they still don't want to educate the people properly. That's the problem on here we got. And I will put that mantle at the hem of the CMO, because she should have made the government realize what was stated by the commission with the 12 that's a report. It should have been worked out and not letting Dr. Beard come in here, come talk about the formulating in a committee, which it was not supposed to be formulated at that time. His consultation was supposed to be going on still because they asked for advice and we give them the advice what they need to take in this step and see what they went into, establishing an industry and bringing up a committee, and the committee up to now can bring full force of what the industry should go forward with. Up to now, they went in Parliament, talk about this report come from Dr. Beard, when he know it was a wash-off report because Dr. Beard, they may come and consult with people.
30 seconds, caller. I have to take a break. 30 seconds.
The information. You're saying something?
I was saying 30 seconds. I have to take a break.
Yeah, I will let you go forward. So I just saying, let me bring the facts of truth to the matter and stop telling lie, Mr. Prime Minister. This is last time I'm saying this. Me ain't fear to say it. Y'all have a safe day.
All right, thanks, caller. And we acknowledge our partners, Hosfords and Flow.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Horseman's. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Horseman's Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat, up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss this, it's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Flow's new combo plan, the people's plan. Combo. From a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
I want a combo, but not for my belly. I feel me cell phone, so me call anybody. Call Mr. Man, call Granny. On the island, Flow come combo me.
Yes, there is no need for two phones no more. Cause it Flow combo plan, you're paying less for more.
Flow got a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow. Dial star 129 number sign to activate your combo plan today.
Welcome back to Voices here on Win FM 98.9. I'm your host, Jermaine Abel. Well, we're just taking a look at interregional travel and the way forward after Liat. We heard just before I took the break from a caller, as well as Barbados' Prime Minister, who was a former chair of CARICOM, Mia Mottley. And she spoke to the issue of Liat and interregional travel. She did an extensive discussion on that there. But how do we go forward now? It's the big question that is being asked. I know everybody has been raising concerns with regards to Liat, and the price that these airlines charge for tickets. So now that Liat is no more, somebody asked a question, would these airlines be providing tickets at a cheaper rate than Liat, and would that be sustainable? Because, at every port, you have to pay taxes with regards to the way forward. You land, there's a landing fee, there's an environmental tax, there's a head tax, all of those taxes. So how would the governments, would they learn from that? Would they decrease the taxes? Would they make an exemption or put an exemption in place for regional airlines that come in? We have been subsidizing a lot of the international flights, which has been acknowledged. And I know some of the smaller islands have been doing that. You have a revenue guarantee if the airlines, when they come in and they don't come at full capacity. Is that something that's going to be done for the smaller airlines, the 6 smaller airlines that are interested in providing a service to the region? So we'll hear in a bit from Prime Minister Harris what he had to say with regards to Liat. But those questions are have to be answered before I think anybody seek to invest and decide to come and operate. One of the airlines that was put forward by or who has shown interest in operating in the region is Caribbean Airlines, and that provides a larger plane at full capacity. So how do you know, or how is an airline like that now going to operate into island, especially when you're coming up north? You have a lot of the smaller islands. So are you going to be having smaller airlines, a smaller service for these smaller islands, Antigua, St. Kitts, St. Martin, the USVI, and the BVI? How is that going to work? So those are the things that the airline industry and the players and the government have to take into consideration with regards to moving forward with interregional travel. There's been talks for quite some time about interregional ferry. Do you think the time is now that we actually have the interregional ferry? That is one other means, because if the airlines are, as colloquially speaking, charge an arm and a leg in terms of their pricing, how are you now going to deal with that? If a ferry is going to be a cheaper option from here to Antigua, maybe from Antigua to Dominica. So it's something that has to be considered, and I trust that the regional governments who are meeting today will actually decide on a way forward when it comes to that, because that is a key pillar of the single market and economy here in the Caribbean. How is the boat or goods and services get from Barbados to St. Kitts or Barbados to Dominica? How many of those smaller airlines will have to pay or lodge a fee to be operating coming to St. Kitts and Nevis, coming to Antigua? So all of that has to be taken into consideration when we're talking about interregional travel. We go back to the phone lines. Caller, good afternoon.
Hello, Mr. Abel.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
There's been a lot of talk about inter-island ferries to help with movement of people through the islands. People not going to take ferries if they can get a plane. And the cost of operating the ferry is not going to be as low as people think. An 18-minute flight to Antigua is altogether different from a 3 to 5 hour sail to Antigua. And the problem with the airline, of course, over the years has been mainly related to two things. One, the taxes in the different countries, and the fact that LIAT has been heavily staffed, particularly in Antigua, and the politics of the airline, particularly in Antigua. And if those two problems could be addressed, then the flying will be less expensive and more affordable. But I keep hearing about this ferry business. With the greatest of respect, I could see Dominica, I could see Martinique to Dominica, which is a very short ride. But I don't see that replacing air travel. I could be wrong.
Okay, I just have one question. How do we remove the politics from the airline industry in light of the fact that
maybe what is happening now is a blessing in disguise. We are in between Prime Minister Brown's comments, a plea to keep the airline based in Antigua. Well, if LIAT has 800 people working for it, and maybe half that many working in Antigua, and reports over the years have stated quite emphatically that too many people working for the airline and too many of them working in Antigua. So to a large extent, LIAT has been a job subsidization program for Antigua. And others have had to bear the cost for that, namely the rest of us, and of course the travelers. So this may be a blessing in disguise. I heard Mayor Motley speak just now. Let's professionalize this. Take it out of the hands of the politicians. Save and accept that the politicians represent the governments, and they can make a collective arrangement with regard to air movement within this space. And then let's let the business operate. Of course, they will have to ensure that it is well regulated and that fees are not too high. But other than that, let these things be run by the private sector. That would be my approach. You know, so what's happening now, the COVID-19, which has exacerbated the problem with LIAT, the lack of travel, the maintaining of the leasehold payments and all of the other carrying costs and so. Here's a chance, and they're speaking about a number of companies which are expressing a willingness to fill this space. And she did say within a couple of weeks we may be hearing things. One would have liked, as a citizen of the region, to get more information on these carriers, what kind of routes they're contemplating, what kind of fares, and then from the government, what kind of concessions they would make with regard to the fares. Because if you look at a typical LIAT ticket, you will see that the taxes are higher than the ticket itself. So minimal involvement, but critical involvement by the government, and let the businesses operate.
But I'm seeing the governments themselves are the ones who shot LIAT in the leg, in the sense that, and I understand that all governments around the region have to upgrade their airport facilities. But when a small territory, I'm not bashing any small territory, but when a small territory is going to take up $50-60 million to upgrade its airport, obviously it has to get revenue to fill that void.
Yeah, but you see, a lot of these projects, and you're quite correct, I agree with you, it's not a matter of bashing, they're ill-conceived. The facility must be equal to the mission. You don't build something like Kennedy Airport in Antigua. Antigua has 2 terminal buildings standing next to each other. 2 terminal buildings standing next to each other. Somebody had this bright idea to go and build this monstrous next to the other one. For what traffic? You know? And so it becomes a cost to the consumer that the consumer can't afford. Government could never afford to pay back for that. And they try to see what they could get back in airport taxes and travel taxes and that sort of stuff. So they must cut the cloth accordingly. You have your airport facility to suit the business you have and the business you are likely to have over the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever the case may be. But don't overdo it. But even when that is done now, governments will have to speak to their lenders and say, look, you're going to have to get a haircut on this because we can't pay you $180 million, $340 million for this facility, and they're going to have to cut the fares. People will not travel intra-regionally, particularly now when there's less money at the rates that LIAT obtained with LIAT before. So whoever is coming in is also going to have to come in with a concession, and they're going to ask the governments to give them concessions too, which is only fair. So you're right, the governments have been the biggest culprits. They have been the biggest culprits with these big facilities, monstrous overheads and taxes. And the consumers, I mean, when it costs you less to fly an American Airlines to Miami than to go to Barbados, then you know you have problems. And you can get to Miami more easily than you can get to Barbados.
Yep.
So, you know, that is and I believe when I heard, for example, LIAT lost $10-12 million last year.
Last year.
They lost $12 million. Now the governments charge them landing fees, but they don't collect it. LIAT, I'm sure, owes tens of millions of dollars in landing fees. And while the other airlines, the international airlines, may make noise and say, well, you can't give away your landing fees to Liat and charge us. Yes, you can. You can. Yes, you can. We have to make a special arrangement for whoever is the intra-regional carrier or whoever are the intra-regional carriers, because that intra-regional connectivity is vital to our survival. Thanks for listening.
All right. Thanks, caller. Yeah, we all know who the caller was, but nevertheless, several points came up there. Yes, we see, as I bring the curtains down on the program today, we have seen time and time again a lot of the small territories, not going to single out anyone, but they continue to build these large airports, go to whether it be IDB, CDB, World Bank, whomever it is, the lending agency they go to. They're going to borrow these, and then we know that the region has a dependency on tourism. We subsidize to an extent some of these international carriers, but we have to reap the revenues from somewhere, and Liat has been the ones who have been paying hefty fees to regional governments. And those same monies, in essence, are naturally turned back over when it comes to Liat. But it's difficult. It's difficult. And saying, well, just before I go, I'll just take this one last caller, and they'll have to be very, very quick. Caller, if you can make your point quick, we're out of time.
Yes, and I out of time. Yeah, man, Floral Garden now, you know, right from me to $1,000 from here to St. Martin, Liat, them Antigua women, they got to go sleep and wake and that. We're in pain that you hear the Mr. Dog, I just say, when go build these two big thing up there, large in the airport. No man. Floral Garden, come better than that.
All right. Thanks, caller. Well, that caller is saying, the price of fuel went down. But that was our program for today. I was your presenter, Jermaine Abel. Thanks for joining us. We have some interesting programming throughout the day. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Stay tuned for the news and sports at 6. The quintessential one is up at 2. And it's Friday. Do enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. I'll be back here tomorrow with the news. So, we don't sleep. Yeah. So do enjoy the rest of your day.
Found the sound 98.9 FM. This is an unprecedented announcement from Horseman's. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Horseman's Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat, up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss this, it's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 30 days of unlimited social messaging, 10 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, and 1,000 local anywhere calls and texts. With the always-on prepaid plan, all for $100. Keep your number when you switch to St. Kitts' most reliable LTE network. Switch to Flow. It only gets better.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
Make your house a dream home with a Horseman's Reno loan. Yes, come to Horseman's today and ask about our home renovation loans of up to $35,000 unsecured. Yes, home renovation loans for as much as $35,000 unsecured over 4 years plus no money down. Yes, you pay zero money down on your loan up to $35,000 home